I always thought my mom's way of showing love was a little unusual. When I was a kid, it looked like tough love. Now, at 28, it looked a lot more like control. My name's Brooke Taylor, and I have spent most of my adult life walking the tightrope between wanting my mom's approval and desperately needing my own peace. She wasn't cruel, not in the obvious way. She just had this way of wrapping guilt up in concern, serving it warm with a smile. She'd say things like, "You know I only worry because I love you, right?" Usually right after criticizing something I'd worked hard on, my job, my apartment, my choices. But this story isn't about her words. It's about the one thing she did that broke everything. For 2 years, I'd been saving for my car. I rode the bus, worked weekends, skipped vacations, all to buy a used 2017 Honda Civic that felt like freedom on four wheels. That car wasn't just transportation. It was proof that I could take care of myself. After years of my mom saying things like, "You'll come running back when life gets hard," I'd finally done something entirely on my own. The morning I brought it home, I parked it in the driveway of her house, the same one I'd grown up in, because I was staying there temporarily while looking for my new place. She stood at the window, arms crossed, lips pressed tight. "It's cute," she said finally. "But, honey, you really think it's smart to take on something like that?" I forced a smile. "Mom, it's paid off. No loan. All mine." Her eyebrows lifted. "You paid cash?" "Yeah," I said proudly. "Every penny I saved from the dental office." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Well, I hope you didn't overpay. People can take advantage of girls like you." Girls like you. That phrase always felt like a knife disguised as a compliment. For the next few weeks, she made small comments about gas prices, about insurance being such a burden. Once, she even offered to keep the car in her name for safety. I told her no, firmly, and that was when her attitude changed, small at first, but I noticed. The cold silences, the sighs when I left for work, the way she'd forget to move her car, blocking mine in the driveway. It was like she needed to remind me that no matter what I bought, what I earned, she still had the power. Then came the Tuesday I'll never forget. A normal day. Or at least, it started that way. I left for work at 8 a.m. sharp, waving goodbye through the kitchen window. She waved back, coffee in hand. Everything felt fine. By the time I got home that evening, my parking spot was empty. At first, I thought I'd parked somewhere else. I walked around the block twice. Then 3 times. Nothing. My car was gone. I rushed inside. "Mom, did you see?" She was sitting at the dining table, calm as ever, sipping tea. "Oh, Brooke, you're home early." "My car is gone," I shouted. "Did it get towed? Did someone steal it?" She looked up at me with that serene, almost smug expression that made my stomach drop. "Oh, that. Don't panic. I sold it." For a second, I thought I misheard her. "You what?" "I sold it," she repeated, as if she were talking about something as simple as returning groceries. "You were so stressed about bills and car upkeep. I thought I'd take care of it for you." I stood frozen. "You sold my car?" She nodded, almost proud. "And got a great deal. 6,000 cash. I already deposited it into my account, so it wouldn't get lost." Her account. I felt my pulse in my ears. That was my car. My money. She tilted her head, her tone soft but laced with ice. "Sweetheart, you've lived here rent-free for 3 months. I think it's fair that I get some contribution. You always say I don't let you be independent. Well, this is me helping you learn boundaries." Boundaries. She said that word like she'd invented it. I wish I could say I handled it calmly, but something in me cracked. I screamed, cried, begged. She didn't budge. "You'll thank me later," she said, cleaning up her cup. "One day, you'll see I was right." That night, I packed a bag and slept in my friend Jade's spare room, the same Jade who'd been there for me through every emotional hurricane my mom created. When I told her what happened, she looked at me for a long moment before whispering, "Brooke, that's not love. That's theft." I wanted to argue, but deep down I knew she was right. 2 days later, I went to the police. They told me since the car had been in both our names, because I'd stupidly let her help with the insurance, it was technically not a crime. I remember standing outside the station, staring at the sidewalk, feeling like I was the crazy one.
My mom called that night.
"Are you done being dramatic yet?" she asked. "Because I think you owe me an apology." I didn't answer. But here's the thing about people like her. They think silence means surrender. It doesn't. Over the next few days, while I was crashing at Jade's, I started putting pieces together. Little things I'd ignored before, like the mysterious envelopes that came in the mail marked collections, or the way my mom would panic when the phone rang. Jade noticed it too. "You think she's in debt?" I didn't want to believe it. But the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. She'd sold my car not to teach me responsibility, but to cover something up. And when I found out what it was, I realized I didn't just lose a car. I'd been paying for her lies all along. That night, I opened her old filing cabinet, the one she kept in the garage. Inside were credit card bills, medical loans, and one document that froze my blood cold. A fake donation receipt, under my name. She'd been using my identity to claim tax credits for donations that never happened, thousands of dollars worth. I sat there on the floor, shaking, realizing my own mother had sold my car to cover her fraud. And in that moment, something inside me shifted. I stopped being the daughter who begged to be seen, and started being the woman who was done being used. I didn't tell her what I found, not yet, because I knew something she didn't. When you take everything from someone who has nothing left to lose, you teach them how to fight back. I didn't sleep that night. The papers I'd found sat in a pile on the floor beside me, silent but screaming. The fake donation receipts weren't the only thing in that drawer. There were credit cards opened in my name, mail addressed to me from companies I'd never heard of, and at the bottom, a letter from a debt collector demanding payment. My name, my address,
Her debt.
I stared at the signature line and felt my stomach twist. The handwriting wasn't mine, but it was close enough to fool anyone who wasn't looking too closely. The next morning, I called my mom. She answered on the second ring, chipper, like nothing had happened. "Good morning, sweetheart. Are you ready to come home and talk like adults?" I didn't even bother with pleasantries. "Why are there credit cards in my name?" There was a pause, one long, loaded second of silence. Then she laughed softly, that high, airy sound she used whenever she got caught in a lie. "Oh, Brooke,
You're always so dramatic.
those are just old accounts I helped you open when you were in college." "I never had a Macy's card," I said quietly. "And I sure didn't spend $4,300 on furniture." Another pause. Then her tone turned sharp. "Don't start with me. You wouldn't even have a credit score if it weren't for me. You're welcome." I hung up. That afternoon, I went to the bank with Jade. The clerk ran my information, frowning at the screen. "Miss Taylor, it looks like there's quite a bit of activity under your name. 4 open credit lines and 2 loans." I felt my throat tighten. "Can you tell me who opened them?"
He shook his head gently.
"All signed by a co-applicant, an Elaine Taylor." My mother. I remember walking out of that bank and sitting on the curb. The sun was hot, but I couldn't feel anything. Jade sat beside me quietly, her arm brushing mine. "She's been using you," she said softly. "Yeah," I whispered. "And I let her." For a few days, I did nothing. I went to work. I smiled at patients. I pretended to function. But inside, I was replaying every conversation I'd ever had with her. Every guilt trip. Every, "I only want what's best." Now I could see it for what it really was. Manipulation with a mother's face. Then came the final blow. I got an email from the IRS. A flagged account. Suspicious deductions. They wanted proof of donations made under my name. My mom had written me into her scam. And now I was the one being investigated. I sat at Jade's kitchen table with my laptop open, reading the email over and over. My hands were shaking so badly that I had to set the mouse down. "She could get you in serious trouble," Jade said quietly. "You have to report it." "She's my mom," I whispered. "She sold your car, Brooke." I closed my eyes. Jade was right. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about survival. The next day, I filed a report. Fraud. Identity theft. I brought every document, every receipt, every copy of her signature that didn't match mine. The officer, a kind man with tired eyes, listened without interrupting. When I finished, he nodded slowly. "You did the right thing," he said. "This happens more often than you'd think. Family using family. Will she go to jail?" I asked, my voice small. He sighed. "That depends. If she cooperates, probably not. But this," he gestured to the folder. "This isn't small, Miss Taylor." I walked out feeling both sick and free, like I just burned a bridge and finally stopped choking on the smoke. Days passed. My mom called nonstop at first. Then she switched to texts. "You're ruining my life. After everything I've done for you. You think anyone will believe you over your own mother?" Each message hurt less than the one before. Then came one that stopped me cold. "If you go through with this, everyone will know about your father." My father had left when I was 4. She never spoke about him. I barely remembered his face. That text made something snap inside me. She had taken my money, my credit, my car, and now she was trying to weaponize a ghost. I took a deep breath, opened my laptop, and began typing. Not to her. To myself. It started as a journal entry, then turned into something else. A story. I wrote everything. The manipulation, the car, the fake accounts, the moment I realized love shouldn't hurt like this. Jade read it the next morning and looked at me like she was seeing me for the first time. "Brooke, this is powerful. I just needed to get it out." She smiled slowly. "You should tell it." "Tell it how?" "Publicly. You don't have to name her. Just tell your truth." At first, I laughed it off. But that night, lying awake, I thought about how many people might be living the same nightmare. How many grown women were still being emotionally blackmailed by parents who called it love. So I did it. I emailed a small podcast I listen to sometimes, Silent Voices, a show where people share real stories anonymously. They wrote back within hours. They wanted to feature me on the next episode. When I showed up to record, my hands were trembling. The host smiled gently. "You can use a pseudonym if you want." "Brooke's fine," I said. And then I spoke. For the first time, I said it all out loud. The guilt, the manipulation, the theft. How I'd spent years mistaking fear for love. When it aired a week later, I didn't expect anyone to care. But people did. Thousands of them. The episode went viral. Messages flooded in. Women from across the country, some crying, some angry, some simply saying, "Me too." I didn't name my mom, but she knew. She called me one last time. "You've embarrassed me," she hissed. "You had no right." "I had every right," I said quietly. "You took my car, my credit, my name. You don't get to take my voice, too." She hung up. That was the last time we spoke for months. But something changed after that. The police contacted her. The fraud report had moved forward. She avoided charges by paying restitution, using the money from the sale of my car. Jade called it poetic justice. I called it closure. Still, deep down, I knew it wasn't over. Because she had one more secret, one she thought I'd never uncover. And when I did, it changed everything I believed about who I was. A month after the podcast went viral, life felt quieter. Not peaceful exactly. More like the silence after a storm, when everything's still wet and broken, but the air is finally breathable. My mom hadn't contacted me since the day I told her she couldn't take my voice. I'd blocked her number after that, mostly to protect my sanity. But sometimes, I'd still half expect her name to flash across my screen. Old habits die hard. Then, one Friday afternoon, a thick envelope arrived at my apartment. No return address. Just my name, typed, not handwritten. Inside was a single document, a birth certificate. It had my name, Brooke Taylor, but under father. It didn't say unknown, like the copy I'd seen growing up. It said Michael Harris. I froze. The last name hit me like a punch. Harris. My mom's maiden name. She'd told me once, years ago, that my father wasn't worth mentioning. I'd believed her. But now, Staring at that piece of paper, I realized she hadn't been protecting me. She'd been protecting herself. I sat there for an hour, the paper trembling in my hands, until I noticed something else tucked behind it. A photo. A man with kind eyes and a crooked smile, holding a baby that had my same brown eyes. On the back, in faded blue ink. For Brooke, love always, Dad. My breath caught. All this time, she'd told me he'd abandoned us. That he didn't care. That he walked away. But if this photo existed, if he'd written love always, then maybe he hadn't left after all. That night, I drove to Jade's. I told her everything, and she grabbed her laptop immediately. "Let's find him," she said. Part of me wanted to say no, to leave the past buried, but curiosity and anger mixed into something unstoppable. We searched for hours. The name wasn't rare, but after a dozen wrong leads, we found one that made me stop breathing. Michael Harris, 52, community center volunteer, Nashville, Tennessee. It was only a few states away. "Brooke," Jade whispered, "he's real." It took me 2 weeks to gather the courage to email him. I wrote carefully, my fingers shaking over the keyboard. "You don't know me, but I think you might be my father. My name is Brooke Taylor. I just want to know the truth." I didn't expect an answer. But the next morning, there it was. "Brooke, I've been waiting 28 years for this message.
Can we talk?"
I burst into tears. We spoke that night. His voice was warm but hesitant, like he was afraid I'd vanish. He told me he'd never left willingly. When I was 4, he and my mom had fought over money. She'd wanted him to sign over a house he inherited from his parents. He refused. She left, took me with her, and told him he'd never see me again. He tried, filed for visitation, even hired a lawyer, but she kept moving, changing addresses, and eventually he gave up. "She told me you didn't want me," I whispered. "I told her I'd never stop wanting you," he said softly. "I sent letters. Every year. She must have hidden them." My heart cracked open. For years, I'd believed the lie that I was unwanted. And now, on the other end of the phone, a man was telling me I'd been loved all along. A month later, I met him in person. When I walked into that little coffee shop in Nashville, he stood up so fast his chair tipped backward. He looked older than the photo, gray hair, a little tired, but his eyes lit up the same way mine did when I laughed. We hugged. And for the first time, I felt something that had been missing in my entire life. Safety. He brought a box of things he'd kept. Photos, cards, letters he'd written but never mailed. One of them was dated June 12, 2002. "Dear Brooke, I hope you know I'm still trying to find you. You deserve better than lies." I cried the whole way through. When I got home, I sat in silence for a long time. Then, I realized I couldn't keep this buried anymore. Not because I wanted to hurt my mom, but because the truth belonged to me. So, I wrote again. Not in my journal this time, but for the same podcast that had aired my first story. I titled it, "The Secret She Hid Under My Name." It was about the quiet power of discovering your own truth after a lifetime of manipulation. About realizing that family isn't defined by who raised you, but by who respected your voice. When the episode dropped, it exploded. Hundreds of thousands of listens in a week. Comments poured in from people who'd gone through similar betrayals. And then, something I never expected, my mom called. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail instead. "Brooke, I saw the podcast. You don't know what really happened. I did what I had to do. You'll understand one day." Her voice cracked on the last word. For the first time, it didn't sound angry. It sounded small. I didn't call back. Some doors don't need to be slammed, they just need to stay closed. A few weeks later, a package arrived in the mail. Brown paper. Handwritten this time. From Elaine Taylor. Inside was a manila folder, my birth certificate, the fake receipts, the forged credit cards, all the evidence I'd turned over in the fraud case. And on top, a single sheet of paper with one word written in red marker, void. I didn't cry. I just smiled. Because that word wasn't about a document. It was about everything she'd used to control me. 2 months later, I was invited to speak at a women's empowerment event in Chicago. They'd heard my podcast, and wanted me to share my story live. Standing backstage, I was shaking. But then, I looked at the sea of faces. Hundreds of women who looked like me, tired but strong, and I knew I had to do it. I stepped up to the microphone and said, "My mother taught me that love was a debt. My father taught me that love is freedom." And I finally chose which lesson to keep. The audience was silent at first, then someone started clapping. Then everyone did. That moment went viral. Clips of my talk were everywhere: TikTok, YouTube, even morning shows. People called me brave. But it wasn't bravery. It was clarity.
I didn't forgive my mom that day.
But I stopped hating her. Because hate is just another kind of chain, and I'd already spent enough of my life bound by hers. Now, when people ask what happened between us, I just say this: she taught me what love isn't. And sometimes, that's just as valuable.
HerFlare Power.
If this story hit home, remember, your peace isn't something you owe anyone. This is HerFlare, where women rise, even when the people closest try to hold them down. Headphone subscribe to HerFlare for more real stories that remind you, strength is your birthright.